Hello, everybody, and welcome to Defense Metals webinar on the Wichita Rare Earth Deposit Pre-Feasibility Study. My name is Alex Heath, Senior Vice President of Corporate Development and Interim CFO. Joining us today are Mark Tory, President and CEO of the company, and John Good, Metallurgical Consultant. Mark Tory is going to walk us through the highlights of the PFS and what it means for our company and shareholders. Before we begin, I'd like to point out a few key items. All dollar amounts referenced in the presentation are in US dollars unless otherwise noted. We'll also have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Before we proceed, I just must remind everybody that this presentation contains forward-looking statements. These statements are based on management's expectations and assumptions as of today and involve risks and uncertainties that could cause actual results to differ materially. We encourage you to review the full cautionary statement on slide 2 of the presentation, which will also be on our website later. With that, let's get started, and I'd like to hand it over now to our President and CEO, Mark Tory.
Thanks, Alex. And yes, I'm really excited to be giving you the results of the recently announced pre-feasibility study for the Wichita Rare Earth Deposit. The PFS was prepared by Hatch and SRK, who are global leaders in this area. And I personally would just like to thank the whole team who worked long and hard to put this quality document together. The results of the PFS really demonstrate that this project is one of the most advanced undeveloped projects in North America or Europe and has very robust economics. The ability for the project to upgrade the ore from 2% in the ground to 50% through a flotation plant leads to lower costs of production. A separation circuit to be able to remove cerium and lanthanum means that our final MREC product is high value, as it mainly contains the high value magnet products of neodymium, praseodymium, terbium, and dysprosium. The combination of the high value product and low costs mean that Wichita will be one of the best, if not the best, in relation to margins in the industry. Wichita is located very strategically near infrastructure. It's only 80 kilometers from Prince George, which is a known mining industry. It is very close to roads, rails. It's only 500 kilometers from the port of Prince Rupert, and also has accessibility to hydropower, which again leads to the lower costs for us in our production. It also means that we don't have to spend a lot of upfront capital in relation to putting a lot of the infrastructure in place that other companies need to do who are in more remote locations. Next slide, thanks. So in relation to the PFS, as I mentioned, we've got the robust economics based around the value of our MREC product and low costs. And the economics of that show us an NPV at 8% of pre-tax of $1.8 billion. The after-tax NPV at 8% is $1 million, and the IRRs on a pre-tax basis is 24.6% and after-tax 18.9%. The big one for me is like the payback period from the start of production is only 3.7 years. And you can see from the sensitivity analysis graphs underneath that the project is obviously very sensitive in relation to the MREC price. Thanks, Alec. So in relation to cash flows, I'm going to concentrate on the middle column that we've got here, which is our undiscounted unit average prices and costs, which is based on an NdPr oxide equivalent in our MREC. So it shows that in relation to gross revenue, it's $136.33 per kilo, with the operating costs of $37.42, which again highlights the fact that we've got a very high margin operation up here at Wichita. And you can, as it flows through, you can see that the after-tax cash flow that we have on a per kilo basis is $40.33. The other part of this equation that we see here is that there's obviously a lot of taxes that we're paying to both the provincial and the national governments of $604 to the provincial government of British Columbia and 1.2 billion to the government of Canada. That gives us an implied tax rate of 40%. Next slide. So we talk about an improved Wichita flow sheet, and the improvement relates to the third column across and the bottom box, which is the SX removal of cerium and lanthanum. And as I've mentioned previously, the removal of the cerium and lanthanum means that we get a much higher value final product in the MREC, because it leaves the higher value magnet products of neodymium, praseodymium, dysprosium, and terbium. So the overall flow sheet, as you can see here, goes from mining to a crush and grind through a flotation circuit to give us the mineral concentrate of 50%. Then it goes into the hydromet, being the sulfation bake, leaching, the solution purification, and following on into the SX removal. Next slide. Thanks, Alex. So in relation to mining, we'll see a slide further on in relation to how the deposit sits in the topography. But it's a conventional open pit mining operation for a 15-year mine life. And the first 8 years of ore are from near surface and mainly the higher grade, looking at a mining rate of somewhere between 4 to 9 million tonnes per annum, depending on the year, with a very low strip ratio of 3.3 to 1. And as we said, the concentrate that's produced is a 50% TREO. Thanks, Alex. The hydromet and solvent extraction. Obviously, there's a couple of things that happen in the hydromet with the acid baking and the leaching, where that converts the rare earths into the water-soluble sulfates, which then goes into the solvent extraction process to remove all the lanthanum and most of the cerium, which, as I've mentioned, enhances our final product value. The SX process uses an acidic extractant and a kerosene paste diluent for separation. In relation to the lanthanum and cerium, they're precipitated out and disposed, and we'll put them into a separate waste management program. So if there is the ability to use it further down the track, we'll certainly be able to do that. And in our final product, as I keep mentioning, we have the high value magnet metals of the praseodymium, neodymium, terbium, and dysprosium. Thanks, Alex. As I mentioned, so this is the diagram which shows that the yellow is the high grade, and it shows a deposit on the side of the hill, which leads to our lower strip ratio, and shows also the fact that when the early mining is into the higher grade. And I think that's all we need to say on that one, Alex. Next one. In relation to capital, the initial capital costs are obviously $1.4 billion. And you can see the breakdown on the table there. The majority of the costs are obviously in the flotation plant and the hydromet and SX plants. And when we look at closure costs, etc., we've got to look at 100 years in relation to monitoring, etc. So hence the reason for the post-closure costs. Next one, thanks, Alex. Operating costs. So this shows and again, I look at the dollars per kilo of NdPr oxide equivalent in the MREC, which adds up to that $37.42, which to us is low cost when you look at it compared to the high value final product that we have. And you can see the splits yourselves there. And again, all of this will be on our website as well. Next. And in relation to the PFS, we've used just all of the reserves. We haven't used any inferred. And so the reserves of what's gone into the PFS and in relation to the mining plan. And again, this mineral reserve has been prepared in accordance with the CIM definition standards, which were adopted in May 2014. Next one. And that's just some technical notes in relation to the reserves, which you can, again, follow on our website if you need to look in more detail. Our capital structure, what we're sitting at the moment, so we've got 260.7 million common shares issued and outstanding, with 2.3 million share purchase warrants outstanding and 16.6 million incentive stock options outstanding. Last year, we had a convertible, 32 million convertibles of $4 million, and these are automatically converted at 12.5 cents per share when the company has a greater than $4 million Canadian capital raise. That's it, thank you. And just in relation to our PFS, we have a list of all the qualified persons who have contributed to the PFS study. So at this point in time, I think we'll move to questions.
Okay. Maybe I'll start off by just a few questions that we received from shareholders ahead of time. First one is on the technical and geological questions. Maybe this is a question for you, John. How do the Wichita deposit grades and metallurgy compare to other rare earth projects globally?
Well, I guess first of all, in terms of rare earth grades, our grade in the first couple of years is about 3% TREO to be mined. And spread over the first 8 years, I believe the grade, if I remember correctly, is about 2.5% TREO, which is a pretty respectable grade. The only other operations outside of China are Mountain Pass, and they've been blessed with a grade, very similar deposit to ours in many ways, but their grade is about 8%, and the other operation is Linus in Australia, they're about 6%. So they're rather higher grades than we are, but in terms of those deposits that are under investigation, ours is sort of at the top end of the pack at 3%. So it's a pretty good grade. The main thing, though, I think, is that, and this is rather more important than the grade in the ground, the main thing I think we can say about our deposit is that it's got a mineralogy such that it beneficiates very, very successfully. And we take the ore at 3%, 2.5%, we upgrade that to 50% total rare earth oxides at about 80% recovery or better in the first few years. And that is extraordinary. That is much better than, for example, Linus. And it's sort of on a par in many ways in terms of the concentrate grade with what Mountain Pass is doing. Was there another part to the question, Alex?
No, that was just
Okay.
that was great. Thank you very much.
The deposit ranks very, very well compared to others. I guess I could add that the strip ratio at 3.3 is very, very acceptable. It's a lot lower than many of the other operations that are out there or planned. It's a good low strip ratio.
Excellent. Okay, next question we have from a shareholder from Prince George is asking, how many jobs will this project create?
Okay, within the PFS study, during operations, we're looking at up to 500 people in total, and that's right across mining, the flotation plant, the hydromet plant, SX plant, and obviously general and administration. During construction, it's estimated it'll be somewhere probably between 300 and 400 people in construction, which will be 2.5 years.
Yeah, great. A question from Michael Gray at Agentis. Although you already have a large reserve and there are plans to infill drill and convert, are there plans to infill drill to convert the inferred resources and add mine life?
Yes, there's certainly plans to do some infill drilling. We have a plan over the next 12 months to do about $4 million worth of drilling. That'll be core drilling, and that will be a combination of trying to move some of the inferred into indicated, as well as using a lot of that core to do some further metallurgical test work, particularly for the feasibility study, particularly moving towards the SX testing as well.
Okay, there's a follow-up question here. According to the Agentis model, defense is trading at 0.04 times PNAV versus the rare earth element developers in Australia, American peers at 0.26 times. Appreciate that you're new in your CEO role, Mark. How are you going to socialize the valuation disconnect and bring awareness to defense?
Yeah, okay, good question. Look, I think there's probably two things to that. One is I think there needs to be a general education and awareness, in North America, Europe, etc., around rare earths, and around rare earth mining and processing companies, what all that means, and I think trying to simplify that story. So that's certainly one thing I think, Alex, you and I will be doing over the next 12 months to 2 years, making sure that we go around conferences, making presentations, trying to simplify the story around rare earths itself. In relation, I guess, to comparison with our peers, what we've just got to educate the market around, again, the fact that our biggest advantage we have is not our own internal technical ability, but it's what Mother Nature has really blessed us with in relation to the ore body that's in the ground, where we have the ability to go from that 2% that is in the ground to 50% concentrate through the flotation plant. And when you do that and you compare that with some of the producers such as Lynas and Mountain Pass and Northern Rare Earths in China, even though they may have higher grades in the ground, they are still getting either less or just slightly more in relation to concentrate grades that are going through the hydrometallurgical process. So again, that's to me a simple message that we've got to get out to demonstrate the fact that the Wichita project and defense is comparable to those projects that are out there and already in production.
Another question here is, have you secured offtake agreements with potential buyers?
Well, at this point in time, we haven't secured an offtake. There's nothing been announced, but there's certainly discussions that we're having with a whole lot of different people around potential offtakes. And I guess that's watch this space in relation to where we go over the next 6 to 12 months. But certainly something we've got to look at. Look at strategic partners, and that would involve offtakes potentially as well. So definitely yes, not right now, but certainly on the radar and certainly something we are looking at.
Yep. Another question from a shareholder is, are there government incentives or funding programs available for rare earth projects?
Oh, yeah. Again, obviously, when you look at some of our peers, I don't think Lynas wouldn't be operating today if they didn't have the support of the Japanese government through JOGMEC. So that they certainly got the support that way. In relation to Mountain Pass, again, they've had government support recently and in the early days. There's government support in the US, there is government support in Canada, and there's government support in Europe. There's a lot of the governments are talking about critical mineral funds, and that's what we've got to look at trying to tap into. Obviously, as part of this PFS, we're not assuming any government funding, but any assistance that we can get in relation to these critical minerals that we're going to be producing, any help from governments through US, Europe, Canada in particular would be welcomed.
Great. And maybe one final one is, what is the estimated timeline for production?
In relation to the PFS timeline that we have, it's all based around the current legislation for timing of getting permits, etc., and assumptions of how long a feasibility will take us to complete. And in relation to those timings and getting the permits, the feasibility study construction was starting in 2030 with a 2.5 year construction period. So we'd be starting our ramp up and operations in 2032.
Great.
But sorry, and in relation to that, obviously we are working and in discussions with government around how we can try and reduce that time frame and try and come in earlier through that permitting process and see whether we can do things quicker through the feasibility study.
Great. That's it for questions.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and please note that there's a video on our webpage in relation to a summary of the PFS, as well as obviously the full announcement. So appreciate your time today, and if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us at Defence.